A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Let's again begin, brothers, inshallah. A couple of things. Uh, I'm really sorry about my poor English. Okay. But and secondly, I cannot express in a very organized way. Okay. So these are a couple of things I'm sorry about, but I'm still having the discussion because I have the feeling that I should share it with other people, okay, with whatever quality I can. And so I'd also like to beseech you to share with other people if they are the ones who can actually grasp the concept, okay, and they will if you think that they won't misappropriate, okay, because these are many of these much of these discussions will be sensitive. So before you share it other people, as I was hinting beforehand, please make sure that you share it only those people who won't misappropriate, who can understand and who don't misappropriate. Okay. Uh, so although it's not going to a very well organized discussions, and I also don't have very good preparation. Okay, my English is not good at all. But anyway, let's have the discussion anyway. Okay. Uh, an important understanding before I proceed is that the purpose of this discussion is not anyway to create any uh, bad impression about anyone. Okay, uh, we the purpose is rather to help you understand what the actual deen is, and the actual deen actually teaches us to always have good impression about other people, okay, about everyone. Okay, so about every Muslim we should have a very good impression, and even about non-Muslims one should not have any discussion, okay, one should not have any effort to create any bad impression, okay, even about non-Muslims, let alone Muslims, okay, and let alone ulama. Okay, it's no way. I mean, one should never have the intention or any sort of attempt to create any bad impression about anybody else. Well, but it doesn't mean that we are not allowed to understand what the actual deen is. Okay, so understanding of the actual deen and the understanding of the real facts is something that one has the right to acquire, but at the same time one should have good impression about everybody else. Okay. uh, so it's like uh, these two things can actually go hand in hand, although it may look surprising, but these two things can go hand in hand. Okay, like Luqman al-Islam was telling his boy that, oh son, uh, you try to have full fear and expectation from Allah. With regard to Allah, with regard to the Lord, you try to have full and fear or taqwa, okay, and expectation. So the boy replied, how can these two things get together in the same heart? Because these two things look like opposing each other. They appear to be opposing each other. So these two things, how can these two things gather together in the same heart? So Luqman replied, Mumin as if has two separate hearts. Actually, in fact, he has a single heart, but as if he has two separate hearts. So the two things, fear and expectation or hope, can grow in two hearts without affecting each other if they grow at separate places, right? Like say fire and water. If you try to grow both of them at the same place, then one will adversely affect the growth of the other, right? If I try to grow fire, water will affect the growth of the fire, and I try to grow water, fire will affect the growth of water if I grow them at the same place. But if I grow at different places, then there is no problem. One can't affect the other. So, like fear and hope, both can grow fully. One won't adversely affect the other if they grow at separate places, right? So, moment actually he has a single heart, but the growth take place in a way as if they are growing at two different places. Okay. Similarly, brothers, impression about people and the understanding of the real deen and the realities are two different things which as if grow at two different places. So the growth of one does not adversely affect the other. Brothers, can you get me? Can you get the point? So as if they grow at two different places. So there is no problem. You can grow any of them as much as possible, as much as you want. The other can't affect. Okay? Like for example, you see someone peeing standing, having a pee standing, which is forbidden, right? So what should be your immediate impression about him? A bad impression? No, no, brothers. You should still keep a good impression about him. The impression should not be should I mean uh, should not be adversely affected anyway. Okay, it should be as good as before. But you don't actually ignore that standing, being standing is forbidden. That's not the actual deen. The actual deen is one should have a pee sitting, right? So you should. It doesn't mean that you, okay. Then you are. I mean, you start thinking that well, this is okay in deen. No, one should have the understanding of the real deen. What has been, because deen is divine. Okay, I should have the understanding of what has been sent down. So one should have had the understanding that okay, the actual deen is like that, having a peace sitting. Okay. Although also one should not think that well, no, he is not peeing standing. No, the reality is he is doing that. Okay. So one is the reality, the other is the understanding of the real deen. Okay. So understanding of the real deen one should have. Okay, the actual deen is like having a pee sitting, and the reality is he is having a pee standing. Both one can have. There is no problem with that. Okay, but at the same time he should maintain the good impression about the guy. How is that possible? That's actually possible because these two things, impression, and on the other side you have understanding of the real deen and the understanding of the realities. Okay. These two things grow. One should grow at two different places, like in two different hearts. So there is no problem. Someone says, no, 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 you should not go ahead and understand these things. These are actually, I mean, this part of the deen, you should not go ahead and understand because that will create some bad impression about those people. Okay, so deen is sent down for me, for people, right? For us. And I'm not allowed to understand what has been sent down for me. How can I follow it? I'm not even allowed to understand it. Okay, I was having a muzakara with someone, discussion, similar discussion with someone. After having a long discussion, he said that, well, he he didn't want to hear. So he said that he didn't want to hear further from me because this might create bad impression about ulama, and two of his sisters were in the marriage of ulama. I mean, his brother-in-laws, two brothers-in-laws were ulama. So how can he get along with them? Okay, his family members are ulama. So if he has bad impression about them, how can he get along with his family members? Well, I mean, he couldn't get my point. In fact, the purpose of this intention, this discussion, is not to create bad impression about anybody, and it will not. If he had allowed me to complete my discussion, he could have probably realized that that was not the purpose, and it would not create any bad impression. Okay, it would not have created any bad impression, but he didn't let me finish. So it will, inshallah, this discussion, although it may appear like, I mean, a little different, but gradually, if we go through the whole discussion, inshallah, it will not create any bad impression about anybody in the world. Okay. Let's get back to our discussion. And once again, let me apologize for my poor way of expression. I'm not good at expressing myself. Neither my English is good, but I still would like to share all these things because of the importance of the content. Okay, I think many people who are the workers of the efforts of Deen, which is commonly known as Tablig efforts, need to understand these things well. Uh, and So, however, the quality of this discussion, if I hope that if the listeners, I mean you guys, uh, pay attention, then hope, I mean, you'll be able to uh, grasp the content, okay, and act accordingly. Anyway, we're talking about maintaining good impression about people, which is very important, in a very important feature of Deen. And I mean, there is a hadith very popular that is, I mean, pretty much like that. The meaning is pretty much like, if someone, if you can spend your morning and evening, which means your day and night, I mean the whole day, in a way that you don't possess even an iota of bad impression about anyone. Okay, even without an iota of bad impression about anyone, then please do that. If you can spend spend this way your days without any bad impression, even an iota of bad impression about anyone, then you do that. So I mean, it's not easy to maintain good impression. The I mean, it can be inferred from the way the hadith is stating that it's not easy for everyone to hold this kind of impression, but if one can do that, he should go ahead and do it. Another popular hadith is that someone was visiting 3 times after wudu, holding his shoes, and water was dropping from the shoes, from his beard, and Rasulullah was declaring him as an inhabitant of Jannah, paradise. Okay. Then another Sahaba spent 3 nights with that, in the house of that Sahaba, in order to just find out, only to find out. He became his guest. He offered himself to be a guest of him, and his whole purpose was to find out why Rasulullah had told him like that. Okay. Um, and finally, at the end of the whole story, uh, it what came out, he didn't have anything special except that he could forgive everybody. He didn't have any complaint about anyone. He didn't have any bad impression about anyone. So that's so important then. So important. It can straight lead us to Jannah. So if my speech or discussion causes any bad impression, then I'm actually violating Deen, because Deen causes only good impression about others. So it's no way intended to cause bad impression about anybody, whoever he is. Okay? But very importantly, that doesn't mean that we won't understand what the real Deen says, how the exact Deen is. Neither we would ignore the real situation. Okay. That's what I was saying, that with the example of the guy who is peeing standing. Okay. So we can also put it this way, that if, say, me and some of my friends, we all have our fathers very good, with very good character, but our fathers accept interest from bank or some source. Okay. So in that case, what should we do? Should we just go this way, that okay, no, we should not understand that Deen prohibits the interest? Should it be like that? Because if you understand that it's forbidden in Deen, okay, accepting interest is forbidden. If you understand that, then we would get bad impression about our fathers, which should not be the case, right? So is it like, then okay, none of us should understand that interest is prohibited? Okay, no, it shouldn't be. Or no, they don't, our fathers don't accept Deen. No, it's not like that. Actually, on one side, we all should understand that the interest is prohibited. That's how the exact Deen is. That's how Deen has been descended. It's sent down to us. So we should have, real idea. We should have, the idea about Deen, the way it is sent down. Also, we cannot ignore that our fathers are accepting Deen. Okay. However, on the other side, we would not get bad impression about our fathers. Why? Because these two things would grow at two different places in our hearts. On one side we would maintain good impression. On the other side, we would understand the realities and also how the exact Deen is. Okay. So they won't affect each other. Okay. So it's no way intended to cause any bad impression about anybody. I should also disabuse of the wrong notion that the good impression is not only the right of the ulama, of the scholars. It's actually the right or haq of everybody, even the ordinary people. I don't have the right to steal money or property for somebody who is not ulama. I don't have to have the right to do that, whether he is ulama or not. I cannot steal money from somebody who even doesn't know Surah Fatiha. Okay, it's something that if I steal money from even that ignorant guy, it will still be violation of the haq or right. I am taking his right. So whether a person is ulama or not, an ordinary people, I have no right to steal something from them. Similarly, I don't have the right to do backbiting for any Muslim, whether he's ulama or an ordinary person. Okay, it's not like the backbiting I can do if someone is not ulama. No, I for no Muslim, I can do that. And the in good impression, okay, there's something next to backbiting. Bad impression is an offense next to backbiting. Okay, so opposite to that is the good impression that we have to maintain. When that's for anybody, whoever he is, for all Muslims, we need to have the good impression. Now, some people think that, there are few things which ulama are violating in deen, and these things should be kept hidden. Okay, so the people shouldn't be aware of these particular rules of deen or a part of deen. They shouldn't be aware of that. That part should be kept hidden, because there is something which the ulama are violating. So if people know about this part of deen, then they will have bad impression about ulama, and that's not good. Well, the good impression is the right for everybody, right? So the rest of the deen we can know, because other violations the ordinary people are doing. And it's a absolutely misconception that for ordinary people any impression is fine. Bad impression is okay for ordinary people. So the violations which the ordinary people are doing, so there is no care about them. All these violations or this part of deen, one can learn about. Okay, that these are these are the rules of deen which the ordinary people are violating. There is no problem with that. It's fine that they learn about them. Well, if it is the case that I cannot learn something from deen, because that part some people are not fulfilling, so if I learn, then it will cause bad impression, so I shouldn't learn. So that should happen to all people. Okay, not only scholars. So then no violation should know. So like the smoking, there are a lot of smokers among the ordinary people. So one shouldn't learn that smoking is prohibited in deen, because if he learns it, then he will get bad impression about all these smokers. So that part of deen that is prohibited in deen should be kept hidden. Is it like that? It's not. Because and if the understanding is true, that if I consider that for ulama it is true that the violations that they are doing, okay, those part of deen should be kept hidden, then that should apply to all people. For smokers case, ordinary people's case. Okay, so in fact the actual understanding should be like the whole deen one should be allowed to understand. It's not related to whether people are violating or not, and whether there are scholars or not who are violating. Deen is sent down for people, the whole deen. So people have right to learn the whole deen. Okay, and the violations, there will be people among scholars or among ordinary people, there will violations, but that's a different thing. One should have proper idea about deen, what is the real rule. Okay, what kind of, if it is violated, then what level of sin it would be. That's a different thing that one should learn properly. But about the sinners or whoever is violating, one should have good impression about them. That even if they are doing that, one should still have good impression about them. The good impression will actually grow in his heart separately.